Take it from the top,
2 minutes
everybody.
up. It's good to see you again, Chuck.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, Charlotte. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks very much for speaking to me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you very much for wanting to speak to me in the first place.
Kostova is a fantastic book. I honestly just finished it today, so and I had a great time with it. I love it. I mean, you can see I'm a big fan of Dracula,
Oh yeah,
the kind of the source material. So
me
I
too.
loved it. So I'm quite curious. I mean, the first question is the kind of the most obvious question. Why? What was it about Dracula, which is such a respected cult classic? What was it about that story that you felt that you could bring something fresh to it and kind of living up to that legend? Because that's quite a gauntlet to lay down for yourself, right?
I don't know about living up to the legend, but let's let's not go crazy. But I feel like Bram Stoker, he did an amazing job, but he left a lot of unanswered questions, I think,
Right.
especially as it comes to the brides. Who are these women? Where have they come from? Why are they apparently locked up in Castle Dracula? It's all very strange. So I felt like there was threads to really pull at there in
Right.
maybe a way that hadn't necessarily been done before. But then, having said that, we love to reinvent stories. Dracula is
Sure.
a story that we've been revisiting pretty much this whole time since it's almost just after its publication. We've been revisiting, reimagining,
Yeah. And it's
lots
also
of.
very much, I mean, very much part of the zeitgeist. There's lots of pop culture right now that, especially in movies, movie wise, and there's a lot of other books that are kind of very vampire centric. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, vampires never go away. Like
Yeah.
vampires have been popular for a long time, and I don't think they're
They're
going
not going
anywhere
nowhere
anytime
so
soon.
yeah.
They're immortal.
So I mean, you said that there was quite a few kind of threads that you could pull on there. I'm curious, what was the initial thread that kind of was the seed to everything? What kind of what did you really kind of feel like you really wanted to delve into, and then it kind of opened doors to the other threads that you could pull on.
So I picked up this book, Who is Dracula's Father, if you can see
Right.
that,
Uh-huh.
in a bookshop in Oxford. And one of the essays in there asks the question, why are the brides of Dracula speaking English? And I thought, that's not right. That can't
Yeah.
be right. And I picked up my very battered copy of Dracula, and you can read it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of ran with it. It really, the idea just sort of possessed me and wouldn't go away. And I just had to sit down and explore it.
Uh-huh. And kind of from that, what was kind of the first light bulb moment that you realized that you really had a story that you could take from this language thing that didn't kind of make
Oh, that
complete
makes it
sense?
sound so neat and tidy. I
I mean,
don't think
a
there
lot.
was. I
So many
don't think there
writers say the
was.
same. I make them sound neat and tidy and organized, and then they say it's completely the opposite. Yeah.
Oh God, absolutely the opposite. I mean, it took me a long time to write this book. I started
Mhm.
in the autumn of 2019 and I
2019, right?
finished, yeah, and I finished it in sort of the end of 2022, beginning of 2023 before I started sending it out to agents because this is my first completed novel ever.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
just kind of messing around for a lot of the time.
Mhm.
There was definitely not one light bulb moment
Yeah.
at all. I'm still waiting for it.
I'd say that. But I mean, you must have had. I mean, obviously, you must have been second guessing yourself quite a while because you said it was a few years before you actually kind of put it out to publishers. But when did you decide that there was something that was worth putting out to publishers after about kind of 3, 4 years of working on it?
I mean, I just because I loved it so much and
Hmm.
I it had similarities in sort of tone to a lot of books that I enjoyed
Right.
that were quite well known, like The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova from 2005 is one of my favorites. And I thought, if people have enjoyed that, then if I like that, then out there in the world, there might be people who enjoy
Right.
this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there are so many books published every year. Why not me? Why might
Yeah.
I not be one of those? Let's just have a go and see what happens.
Uh-huh. Which is not an easy thing to tell yourself, especially in today's day and age, especially with AI and all these. I don't want to get onto
Well,
that topic, but I mean, obviously,
it was
just
just
before it
before
really kind
AI.
of flourished,
Yeah.
you know. But I'm just, I mean, a lot of even a lot of established writers themselves are very kind of dubious about things. So I mean, to say that you're going to put this book out and you think there's going to be people there, it must have been quite a, like you said, you worked on it for quite a few years, so it's like quite a big step on your part to kind of find that self compassion and self importance and kind of realize that you've done something that's worth publishing and is going to find an audience, no?
I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought, well, I'll try.
Yeah,
And I was really lucky to find my agent, Francesca Riccardi, but it took a while to find that
sure.
right person, um, and that right agent who believed in it. Because, debut novelist, I haven't won any short fiction prizes. I haven't been published anywhere else. So with just kind of nothing, it took a while to find the person who really believed in it and believed in me. But
Uh-huh.
I just I wanted to try because I think it's very easy as a writer to kind of get in your own head and be like, oh, it's never going to happen, so I may as
Yeah,
well not bother. But you miss 100% of the shots you don't take to
yeah.
bust out a terrible cliche. But I think it's true,
No,
So
that's true. So it's really
why
hard
not
to kind
try?
of find your voice and then find kind of in yourself that it's worth sitting down and writing down and kind of getting it out there. Definitely, yeah. I mentioned now your voice. I'm very curious how you found your voice because this is like it's a very gothic, it's a period piece. So I mean it's very very important that there's so many different people in this novel. I'm quite curious how you found the voice for each character. Especially with there being so many different perspectives and people, because it's an epistolary book. Is those getting those the way that each one writes, not just the way that there's certain dialogues in the book, but the way that each person kind of writes the letters or the journals or whatever. That must have been really complicated to get the exact voice for each specific character in your head.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Short answer.
yes. Um, but I started. So I read an awful lot of advice for the novice writer. And one of the things that kept coming up was, all right, character sheets. So you know your characters really well before you even start.
Hmm.
And it sort of worked.
Right.
Um, sort of. I don't, it's not something I've done again, but I think it worked for me to a point at the time. And from that, it did kind of help me get a sense of at least sort of what these people are like in terms of class, in terms of education, in terms of age or nationality, all of those things, and then who they are in terms of what is it that they most want, what is their like progression through the narrative going to be, and those two things kind of together, what they are and who they are, add up to a voice. But it did take time, and I realized quite early on that I could only work on one in any given writing session
Yeah, that's what I
because
was going to ask you.
otherwise it,
Yeah.
it would sort of bleed through into the other ones, especially between two of the main characters, Lucy and Alice, who are
Right.
of different social classes. They're from different places geographically. They're writing in very different ways. Lucy's writing in her journal, Alice is writing to her family. And yeah, I found that they hold a lot of the narrative, the two of them, and the voices would bleed into each other. So I had to just be very mindful of that while I was
Yeah.
working.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's challenging,
It's tricky,
but
definitely.
I
Yeah,
had
no, but
time.
I think yeah, it worked. I mean, it must have been really kind of enjoyable to let all these voices kind of organically grow
Yeah,
themselves.
it's
No,
great fun. Writing in the
yeah,
epistolary style, which I kind of wanted to do because it's like Dracula. And at the time, I felt most comfortable writing in the first person. I thought it would be easier. That's not quite how it turned out. Um, but it's really fun to do because you get to play with that idea of who knows what, who is hiding
yeah,
what. Um, like Alfred Hitchcock said about if you have a scene with two people talking, that's boring. If you put a bomb under the table, that's interesting. And if only
Yeah.
one person knows about the bomb, then ooh, you've really got yourself a story.
Yeah.
And I thought like that. And there's times in the narrative when the reader is the person who knows what's going on the most
Oh, more than
of
what
everybody.
someone, yeah, uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And also because it's epistolary, I kind of, I mean, you said you thought it was going to be easier, but I guess in a way it is, it must have played in your favor the fact that you could almost move things around a bit like a jigsaw puzzle almost, and to make it, I mean, there's specific moments in the book where you actually say that certain letters or parts of journals aren't told in chronological order because it makes sense for them to be told in the way that you want to tell them. I'm quite curious, was that something that came about later on because you decided that when you came up with certain journal entries or diary entries or letters or whatever, and then you realized that maybe this one can go a bit earlier on to kind of reveal certain things and not reveal other things till later on? Was that something that played in your favor?
Yeah, exactly like
Yeah.
that. And also, to a certain extent, there's an intelligibility question because if you kept things very strictly chronological, you'd lose, I think you'd lose the reader, to be honest.
Yeah.
And there was already in the first part of the novel, you're already meeting quite a lot of characters quite fast. But after that, I wanted it to kind of settle down a bit so that the reader could
Right.
spend more time with individual characters. Like the second part is almost all through one particular character's consciousness. And freeing yourself from the strains of being exactly chronological is quite helpful. And I
Uh-huh.
think I don't really want to spoil it, but I think that's done in quite a meta way
Yeah.
throughout the book. There's definitely layers, and that's fun to do too.
Oh, no, yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, you also mentioned the you had a kind of issues with the language, why the bride spoke in English, and
Mhm.
you really play around with the languages quite a bit here. Certain ones they start learning languages, and and kind of all different people speaking different languages to kind of communicate with each other. I'm quite curious how you approach that. Not just different languages, but also the languages, the English language, because we would get some Yorkshire in there from Whitby. And that must have been another goal that you kind of really laid down for yourself to make sure that when they were speaking in English or trying to communicate, that it all kind of made sense and didn't sound like you said, like why are they all speaking in the same language?
Yeah, I think that was something I didn't actually anticipate at the time, but because they're moving between countries,
Hmm.
and moving through like the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where Transylvania was at the time, it's in Romania now. It was governed by the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the time, and then moving through that place, which was a place of an awful lot of languages. So there's people
Yeah.
who speak mostly German, there's people who speak Hungarian, there's people out in the countryside who are speaking in a dialect. Who is understanding what is
Hmm.
also something quite key to the whole narrative. Who is understanding what and when and how. So the language aspect is kind of another layer on that. But as for the different sort of accents and things, it was important to me that Alice, who is the working class character who's
Yeah.
from Yorkshire, it was
Yorkshire.
important to me
Yeah.
that that came out.
Uh-huh.
So it comes out in her sort of reported speech. When other people are reporting her
Right.
speech, it comes out more strongly than when she's writing,
Yeah.
obviously. My
Absolutely. Yeah.
partner is from Yorkshire, so I was always
All
asking
right.
for little bits
Uh-huh.
of slang and things. But in terms of the overall sound of the novel, I love Victorian fiction. I've always loved Victorian fiction, so I found it
Mhm.
quite easy to kind of slip into that mode so that they
Right.
sound genuinely of the time and
Yeah.
not just sort of like modern English with like a bit of gloss on top.
Hmm. No, it really did. I mean, it really did sound. I'm originally from Huddersfield, so I'm also from Yorkshire myself. So obviously, yeah, no, but I mean, that sounded great. And then all of the kind of the Gothic Victorian, the kind of the set period language sounded so on spot on. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Uh-huh. Talking of the times as well, you also, I love, I mean, I studied psychology, so I really loved also the kind of the journal entries of the doctors that I kind of go at the beginning of a lot of the chapters. Um, I'm quite curious because you talk about hypnosis and various kind of of medical treatments. I'm quite curious, how deep a rabbit hole did you go down there to kind of discover exactly how they would have treated someone like that? Like, I don't want to give too much away. One of the protagonists, how would they treat her in those times? Is that very spot on with historically speaking?
Uh, I really went down a rabbit hole, and it's
Right.
very dark. Like late 19th
Yeah.
century, early 20th century psychiatry and treatment of mental illness is extremely dark. And
Yeah.
it wasn't something I wanted to explore in depth. I wanted to keep
Right.
the terror and the fear with the supernatural and the
Right.
vampires
Okay.
rather than getting into that kind of darkness. And
Hmm.
she's already experienced some of that when she comes to Littlemore Asylum, when she's with John Seward. And in Dracula, John Seward is a very forward-looking kind of person, a very forward-looking character, and I sort of extrapolated from that and shunted him forward in time and thought he's going to be the person looking forward to more humane treatments, not the kind of brutal treatment of the mentally ill
Yeah.
from kind of bygone era. The hypnosis was really interesting to learn about. One of the hypnosis methods is more fictional than others because I needed it to do something very specific for the plot. So I built
Right.
on sort of several and added a dash of artistic license.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it is fascinating what they thought at the time about the mind and why. But they didn't have a term for PTSD, which is what this character is
Sure.
suffering from.
Yeah.
And I thought PTSD with kind of overlayering of the supernatural almost. And I was trying to keep it quite grounded and think, what would this really be like? And then add that supernatural layer over the top. But they understood already kind of soldiers coming back from war would
Yeah.
have kind of PTSD symptoms. They didn't think of it that way, but they understood it. So I kind of built on that a bit. That's mentioned. Um, but yeah, I didn't go as deep and as dark with it as I could have done because I wanted to keep it sort of moving forward and looking forward rather than looking back, if you see what I
Hmm.
mean.
Hmm. Oh yeah. No, but I love the fact that you use those to kind of to introduce chapters that just really, I don't know, just can really set the scene perfectly.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was great. Uh-huh.
Thank you
And
very
so,
much. Yeah, that framing device, I wanted to make sure that it was revealing the mysteries at the right rate. That was actually more
yeah.
challenging in terms of the epistolary thing, in terms of the
Uh-huh.
jigsaw of moving it around, making sure that the right thing is being revealed at the right time
Yeah.
through the frame narrative as
It
well.
took me, it reminded me a little bit of Frankenstein as well, because Mary Shelley was so good at kind of seeding little hints of what was to come.
Oh, she
And
was
this kind of
absolutely
was very much
fantastic.
that way. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I've just recently reread Frankenstein actually, and that is very high compliment. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So she was very good at that. She really knew what she was doing
Yeah.
when she was using her frame narrative. It's quite common, I think, in 19th century novels. Wuthering Heights does it as well,
Yeah.
but that's more of like a bookend at the beginning and end of the narrative rather than moving through. But yeah, it was something that I've enjoyed in fiction that I've read, so
Hmm.
that's why I
Yeah.
included it.
Talking of Frankenstein, there's actually mentions of Frankenstein that one of the main characters reads Frankenstein there. Um, She says it's well, calls it the delightfully monstrous creation of Mrs. Shelley. She calls it in the book now. Obviously, Dracula and Frankenstein were inspirations, but I'm quite curious. It states how Frankenstein is a meditation on what is good and what is evil, and the meaning of what it is to be human. So I'm guessing that that was something that was very much what you wanted to also extrapolate into your novel, not to kind of replicate that without echoing it exactly as in the same way. But yeah, that was obviously a very maybe even felt more of a stronger influence Frankenstein than Dracula in your novel.
Um, I don't know that I would go quite that far.
No,
Um, because Dracula, I love Dracula much more than I love Frankenstein.
really.
Um, yeah, I think it's a very different kind of novel because I'm going slightly off topic, but Frankenstein and Dracula kind of bookend the Industrial Revolution and almost the 19th century because Frankenstein reads very much like a novel of the 18th century,
Right.
sort of early Gothic, but Dracula is like techno fiction. We're looking forward. We've got the Orient Express whisking characters across Europe. We've got phonograph recordings. We've got blood transfusions. And so I think if there is Dracula inspo, if there is Frankenstein inspo, I think it's probably a little bit more accidental. But yes, the idea
Right.
of the supernatural, and we enjoy stories about the supernatural, read stories about the supernatural because they say something about what it is to be human and not human. And Frankenstein, yeah, obviously does go quite deep into that in a much more philosophical way than Dracula
Yeah.
does. But I think that's part of the point for me of the supernatural in fiction and maybe even of horror more generally, to think
Yeah.
about what it is to be human, which is very, very grand. But
Yeah, because
um,
I mean, Lucy talks of how people often talk of literature as you said it in the book, a proxy for declaring their innermost feelings.
mhm.
So I'm guessing that this was a great way for you to purge certain things that you wanted to get off your chest, maybe more in the modern day society. Is there anything that you can kind of share, or was that just something
um, so
by proxy?
a lot of Mafalda, my I call her my anti-heroine. I don't know if that's
Right.
strictly true in the strictest definition, but that's how I think of her. She's, Lucy's like secret lover. They've been secretly in a relationship for a long time. Um, and she's very angry a lot of the time. She feels very
Yeah.
powerless in the society that she lives in because she's incredibly intelligent, incredibly capable woman, and she is often butting up against the societal strictures around being a woman and the treatment of like her own treatment of other women around her. And she has a lot of rage about that. And there are
Yeah.
a couple of points where some of my own feelings about how women are still treated in our society today do
Hmm.
come out through her, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, that comes across a lot, especially with the character you mentioned. But at the same time, I expected the women to be treated even worse. So because I mean, there was one moment in the book where there's talk of this relationship that they have, and one of the people who they expected to kind of frown upon it says that she takes seriously the Lord's warnings not to judge others rather than being disgusted by it. So what was the kind of barometer that you created for yourself there? Because I would have imagined that back in those days, those kind of comments were probably not as typically heard as
Yeah.
that.
So I wanted it to be in keeping with the character who is saying that, who is being accepting. I wanted to make sure that it was very in keeping with her character and who she is as a person. Um, Whereas the reader doesn't need to be told two women's relationship like this would not be accepted in the
Yeah.
19th century. You don't need to be told that. You don't
Sure.
need to see the homophobia. You know.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to not shy away from that, but I didn't feel the need to depict it in
Yeah.
great detail. Um, and it was important to me that the characters who are in any way affirming or accepting or understanding, that it is in keeping with who they are as people and that it doesn't just come out of the air. It's not just sort of 21st century progressive ideas being put into a 19th century character's mouth. Um,
Yeah.
the character that you're talking about is a very good person, a very moral
Yeah.
person, very sort of Christian in the truest sense. So when her very close friend is saying these things to her, she understands and she is willing to kind of meet her friend where she is. And also she's known them both for a very long time, so it's not
Yeah.
entirely a
It's not
shock.
something that
And
taken about. Yeah.
she's also in a relationship which society thinks is slightly off. Her husband is a lot older than she is. Um, and it's so she has some understanding personally as well.
Hmm. Coupled to that, also, it was really fascinating for me that you had these two women in a relationship, and at the same time, we also get a lot of moments where you address another character who's having problems, who really wants to have children, which was it was really fascinating for me that you kind of had those two together and kind of each helping each other and kind of empathetic with each other.
They're friends who've been friends for a very long time. And I think that's reflective of how I feel. I have friends who are mothers, and I understand and respect that choice. And I
Hmm.
think it's very true, this idea of people who make different life choices always being like disagreeing or butting heads in some way is very false, especially women who've known each
Yeah,
other for a very long time, who are close friends. It's very, live and let live. And these two, they're close friends, they love each other, they support each other. It's just, it felt very natural to write it
yeah.
in that way, I think. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, no, no, we're brilliant. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But also, something that was interesting going back to the medical side of things. I know that you didn't want to kind of overdo it with all the very dark and sinister treatments, but something that you talk about in the novel, if I can remember what it was now, was that you said that yeah, John Seward, he says that since he became a doctor, he always found it dreadfully embarrassing to be ill, which kind of my both of my parents worked in the medical industry. My dad was a GP and my mother was a nurse, and they were my father specifically was he didn't expect himself to get ill, and they had quite a few scares because he thought that there was nothing wrong with him and he had appendicitis or
Oh my
a
gosh.
long list of different kind of things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm really reminded of that, but I'm quite curious. I want to couple that idea with you since you've become a novelist now. You've released your debut novel. I'm quite curious if since you've become an author, is there anything that you find yourself embarrassed about because of being a writer?
No.
No.
What would there be? What would there be? If anything, the only thing that I kind of regret on this journey is not taking it more seriously sooner. I think there's a
Hmm.
real tendency for people who are creative, whatever field that's in, who are creative and who want to be creative is more than a hobby, as a profession, to second guess yourself and play it down and not really back yourself in the way that you might if you said, "Oh, I want to be an accountant or
Yeah.
something." Um, and the only thing I really regret and perhaps I'm a little bit embarrassed about is not taking it seriously and not being more focused, perhaps.
Hmm. Yeah. But why would you say that? Like, I mean, you said it took you like 5 or 6 years to write this book. Why would you say what was kind of the biggest stumbling block for you yourself that kind of stopped you from taking the steps sooner? Like you said, that you kind of feel embarrassed that you didn't do it sooner.
Well, the pandemic was a big part of it because I
Sure.
started it towards the end of 2019. Obviously, like during the early months of the pandemic, I was not creative at all. Just, the sheer stress of that period of time um, kind of meant that I put it down for quite a while. But then when I picked it back up again and read through it, and it felt more cohesive and more um, not polished. It felt better than I expected.
Right.
Um, and so in 2021, I took a writing class with the Oxford University Department of Continuing Education, which was absolutely fantastic. And I felt that that kind of honed a lot of skills. It introduced me to a lot of different ideas. I got used to reading and critiquing other people's work,
All
and
right.
that was kind of the point at which I started taking it more seriously. But if the pandemic hadn't happened, I would probably have done that sooner. But also, it's like
Uh-huh.
just a mental block. When it's Saturday afternoon and you think, oh, well, I could be doing this chore or I could be doing this other thing, to sit down and look at your laptop and write when you don't know if it's going to go anywhere or do anything, it's kind of challenging. And I
Yeah.
wish I'd had more sort of self-belief at that point.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah.
I mean, you said that learning to critique other people's work really helped you. I'm quite
Yeah.
curious, how did your kind of your approach as a writer change once you started to critique other pieces of work?
Um, well, first off, let me say it was a really positive environment. It wasn't,
Right.
People were
It
not ripping
wasn't. This
each
is
other
rubbish. This
apart.
is yeah, sure, yeah, yeah.
No, it was nothing like that. I don't
Uh,
know that my uh, writer ego would have survived that at that
yeah.
specific point. I think I started to develop more faith in myself. Also, my
Hmm.
ability to take criticism,
Right. Yeah,
such
because
as
I
it
was going to
was,
say,
or
'cause
take
learning to
feedback. Say,
critique. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to learn to kind of critique other people. Speaking about myself, if I know that if I read something else that someone's written and compare, I can't help comparing it to stuff I've done. If I critique someone else's work, it would make me more self-conscious of my own stuff. So that was the reason why I kind of asked you how the critique helped you as an
yeah, I think
author.
because we were all in the same boat, I think it didn't feel too comparative in that way. And also, people were writing wildly different things,
Sure.
very different styles, different all sorts. So I didn't feel that there was necessarily that direct comparison. But I think being able to look at what people are doing well, what people are really doing something different that you've never thought of, and just kind of having that forum to share ideas, and maybe critique was even the wrong word, maybe more,
Yeah.
think more collaborative, more sharing,
Yeah.
than picking holes in something.
Yeah.
I think it gave me more faith in my own ability to be conscious of what I was doing. So more confidence in my ability to apply craft,
Right.
thinking about how do I structure this sentence, what punctuation do I use, and all of that came in useful when I was doing all of these different, working through all these different points of view in The Brides. There are characters who love the sound of their own voice and use a lot of semicolons, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it helped with some of the more technical aspects that I'd never really dug into before.
Right.
Um, yeah, definitely on that front.
Hmm. And so, I mean, after you'd gone to this course, did you then, was it more a case of you sitting down and focusing on yourself, or do you like to collaborate with other people? I don't know if your partner, your editor, is it very self-centered first? Because I've certain writers that I speak to, they prefer to keep everything as secretive as possible until the very last minute, even from their husband, their wives, or whatever. But then there's others that prefer to share things from the word go to really kind of help them get through the writing process.
So for this one, for the brides, I kept it mostly to myself until I felt like I had a good solid first draft. And then four of my close friends who are all who either work in publishing, are really big readers, or one
Right.
of my friends has a master's in English literature, so she was
Right.
absolutely spot on. So four of my friends all read it and were my beta readers. And they all came back and said that the last third of the novel was just not, it wasn't as good as the rest of it. They
All
said it very
right.
politely. These are like my long-time friends.
Yeah.
So I actually went back and I rewrote the last third of the novel, which is how it is now,
Right.
and sent it round to all of them again, and got more
I
positive
said you nailed it
feedback.
this time.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I think my partner read it at that point. He's not a big
Right.
reader. He's a big audiobook
All
fan.
right. Uh-huh.
So the difference between, someone speaking and someone writing, he had like really good insights into that, which was very helpful. So
Right.
how characters sound and how their speech is being reported, because I'm not the biggest audiobook listener. I hadn't thought of
Yeah,
it in
no,
that
me
way.
neither. Yeah.
So I had good collaboration on the run up, and then I had almost nothing. My agent made one change, and that was just right at the very end. So there was only a little bit from her. But then when I signed with Tor at Pam Macmillan, the new Nightfire
Yeah.
brand, my editor, Sophie Robinson, she had some suggestions, but it was, she just kept telling me more. We need more dread, more angst. Let's do
Right.
more fear. Um, so there wasn't that much in terms of a collaboration at that point per se. I think I do edge more towards the just leave me alone in a room until I'm ready to show it to the
Yeah.
world, and
Uh-huh.
then we'll go from there. Although writing my second novel has been a different experience because it's been much shorter timelines.
Right.
So I had to send it to my agent and then to my editor much earlier in the process, and that's very strange. To send something that I'm not 100% happy with at that point feels
Sure.
very, oh, it feels very awkward.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I but not just sending it, but I imagine writing something that's got a deadline. must change the
Hmm.
approach completely compared to
Yeah.
this first novel, no?
Yeah, it's they call it second novel syndrome. When you've had all
Yeah.
the time in the world to write your first novel, and then the second one, it's a bit panic inducing.
But I guess it's a nightmare when you first kind of realize you've got to get it done in X time. But at the same
Yep.
time, I guess that pressure maybe helps you as well in certain ways, no? To get things.
No, not
No,
for
not at
me.
all. No, really.
Maybe some people, maybe for some people, but I do not find the pressure helpful. I generally
No.
prefer to like meander and have space to think. And I've had to be a lot more structured this time, and it feels much less natural to me.
Yeah.
But I think I've got better at it as I've gone along, and I'm sure it will
Uh-huh.
become easier to write in this way. But I just think I have perfectionist tendencies. I like things to be really like perfect
Yeah.
before sending it out formally, and I did not have that luxury. So
Uh-huh. No, but
yeah,
I guess at the same time, these time constraints will help you to kind of get over yourself a little bit, and
I hope so
if you know what I
eventually.
mean. Brilliant. Also, something that was quite curious is that, I mean, the book's come out in the UK already, and it's coming out very soon in the US. This is one of the very few cases where, if I'm not mistaken, the artwork is it almost
Yep,
exactly or
it's the
exactly
same.
the same,
Yeah,
which is a very, very rare case.
I think well the cover's so striking. Like we had fantastic
Oh,
cover
it's a great
designer.
cover, yeah.
It's really powerful. I was allowed I was allowed a little bit of input. They let me pick the font. It was very
Right.
exciting. Because I'm not artistic at all. I'm very much a
Right.
words person. So seeing this and it stands out. It really stands out on the shelf. It's just such a punch. I love it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and they let me I there's like a lace decor around the edge, and that was also
Yeah,
my
yeah.
suggestion.
I haven't
Um,
had it in my hands, but I'm guessing is that kind of, is it tactile, the laced
yes, so
edge?
it's
No?
spot
Yeah.
UV round
Uh-huh.
the edge, and it
I
picks
sp
out kind of the lace
I've
of the
spotted
bride's veil.
I think there's
Yeah.
some signed copies still left in Forbidden Planet, so I'm gonna have to get myself a copy of
Yeah.
one of
Oh,
those ones.
oh
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
I signed a giant pile for for Forbidden Planet. So yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
to
there's
remind.
probably some kicking around. Um, but no, it was absolutely fantastic. I was pleasantly surprised that the American publishers wanted to keep it, but
Yeah,
I guess it was just that
that's just so
that
good.
punchy. Yeah.
They couldn't improve on that. Yeah. Uh-huh. Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for a fantastic book. I loved it to bits. Like I said, I can't wait to get my signed copy from Forbidden Planet. And I wish you the best of luck with the US release, which is right
Yeah,
around the corner.
it is
And
7th of July.
before I leave you, I just want to, and a few people I've spoken to, I was there, they told me how the editors in the UK and the US kind of collaborate also in the final product, the not the artwork, the actual novel itself. I'm quite curious how that played out with you in terms of with the different editors in the UK and
No,
the US.
my US editor didn't hasn't, particularly engaged within the
Oh,
text itself. Um, I did ask at the time, would there be any changing of the language or things? Because I've heard that
yeah,
but that's apparently not something that is as common anymore.
yeah, and I guess
And
even
it's
less so with something like this, which is kind of
something
gothic
historical,
and
yeah.
set in Whitby and all these kind of things. No, yeah,
Yeah. So with this very specific, very English in some ways,
yeah,
um, dialogue and way of writing. So no, I was working with my UK editor for this, but that's my experience. I know that's not
yeah.
necessarily everybody's experience.
Uh-huh. Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks
Yeah.
again for your time. Thanks again for a fantastic book. And like you said, you're in the process of writing your second one, so I can't wait to read that and
Yeah.
hopefully get to
It's
speak
just
to you
been
about that one next
announced.
time.
It's
Ah, it's just
just
been
been
announced.
announced. Yep,
Right. Well, I
literally
will.
saw it today. So it's called Lay Your Bones with Ours, and it's coming
Right.
out spring next year.
Spring next year. Fantastic. Well,
Yep.
hopefully I'll get to read that and speak to you about that one next
Wonderful.
time.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, no, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. All right. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Okay, have a good
Bye.
day. Cheers then. Bye now.